Hey folks, BlackCross here, and it's been a while since we've talked about the game in space, especially anything that's been like newly released or newly announced, so on and so forth, and stuff of the nature. And we have ourselves another Nintendo Direct. Am I allowed to say something here? Am I allowed to say something? This is going to be one of those unusual cases where I have a hot take on something and no one's going to like it. No one's going to like it at all. And that is that I wish Nintendo would not release a Nintendo Direct, but instead release a surprise Nintendo Direct. You know, I would love to have just been able to go on Twitter, and then Nintendo was literally the first one to literally say the phrase, "Oh, we're gonna launch a surprise Nintendo Direct," and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, no one predicted that this was gonna happen." Instead, I get literal fanboys literally saying, "There's gonna be a Nintendo Direct happening here," and it's like, it's partially obviously scheduled, you know. I mean, this kind of alongside, according to a lot of people who have talked about this, basically this is a direct to answer questions to shareholders, and that way Nintendo can discuss the numbers rather than future details and releases for the upcoming first quarter or so on and so forth. And it's just one of those things where it's like, I still wish we didn't have a Nintendo Direct that happened this month. Because it's just literally every single time, anytime there's like a Nintendo thing going on, it's mostly involving with the Directs. It's no longer about the games that's going to happen, it's just the Directs, followed by predictions and stuff. And some of those predictions, some of them can range from like actual predictions to unrealistic predictions. To me, Directs should be just the equivalence of like any E3 event type thing. It should be special, it should be something to be excited for whenever something does pop up. Instead, people see a Nintendo Direct as being like either some kind of health monitor system, and if they don't release a Direct a single month, all of a sudden everyone's thinking, "Oh, Nintendo's dying, Nintendo's dying." If there's one thing I've definitely seen, Nintendo is definitely not dying. Instead, it's quite the opposite. They're flourishing. They've got a freaking theme park being built as we speak. And then also you got the Mario movie, which I am excited to watch. I'm a little bit iffy on Chris Pratt's end of things, but after seeing several other scenes with him talking and stuff, I can safely say that I am definitely more excited to watch it and just enjoy it. But with that being said, I do want to talk about the Direct a little bit. Mostly because there wasn't really anything big going on, but it does build up a little bit of confidence that tells me that Nintendo's definitely building. Like, they've built a foundation for quite a long while, and it's been proof of that. For a while, they built like a foundation in the new gaming space, you know. Obviously, nowadays it's all about streaming services and stuff like that, and while they're not perfect, they are a thing that's been going on recently, and Nintendo is literally building their foundation on that media front, and from what we've seen so far, it's been pretty good. Is it solid? It's getting there, but I can actually safely say that now we're finally getting some details, and it's finally flourishing, you know. Hopefully this ends up becoming a legacy content type thing, and it will continue on into the next generation of the Nintendo console, hopefully. So let's talk about the Nintendo Direct a little bit and talk about what had been released and what I'm excited for the most. The first one, right off the bat, the first one that was showcased is Pikmin 4. Honestly, I was surprised to finally get the announcement of Pikmin 4 when we found out about it last year. And I was like, yay, Pikmin 4, I'm happy! And obviously we didn't get any details except for saying, hey, it's coming, it's finally being made and everything like that, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, good. Just gotta wait for you to mention a date of some kind. Anyway, so by the time we finally got to see Pikmin 4 and details on it and stuff like that, there was two main things that kind of got me, you know. One of them is the camera angle. I had heard that they were going to take this to a different approach compared to what they normally do. Normally, Pikmin is kind of like over-the-head perspective, and that's actually a good thing in terms of like the field perspective and stuff like that. It makes sense based on the gameplay aesthetics and stuff. Unfortunately, this time they decided to take a different camera angle approach, to a point where I don't know if I hate it or if it's just new to me. I think it's just new to me, obviously because the camera perspective, you're allowed to see upwards instead of downwards on top of the character, is literally behind the character. But it's still one of those things where I see it and I can't help but think to myself, this is different. I don't know if I hate it or if I don't know. Again, it's one of those perspective views that makes me think to myself and say, it's going to take some getting used to. I hope, I don't know if they will, but I hope they have an option where you can try this camera angle, and then after, like, say, tutorial day 3 or 4, the game developers are like, okay, we're going to throw in an option where if you don't like that camera angle, you can easily opt out into the traditional angle. And I hope that's the case, because if it is, that means I could play Pikmin normally. I mean, obviously, a different perspective doesn't hurt. It does make the game a lot more interesting and a little bit more exciting. But there's something about that view angle from previous entries compared to Pikmin 4 that I like the best. Obviously, in terms of just, obviously, it's aesthetically pleasing, you know? You're able to see all the Pikmins around you. You're able to see them being used in different ways that you're going to be using them and stuff like that. And it's a better way of being able to analyze the field and stuff. But, aside from that, though, a couple of new Pikmins have been revealed. The first new Pikmin that they showcase is Ice Pikmin. Although I looked at it and I was like, this is a rock Pikmin. Why are they calling it ice? But it wasn't until I saw how they were going to be used in the game that I was like, oh, this changes the game entirely. So the Ice Pikmins have two functionalities. Obviously, it's both freezing, but in the way that they are being used is completely different. For starters, if an enemy ends up actually eating one of these Ice Pikmin, it actually freezes them. Like, one Pikmin freezes them in their place. And that is a strategic move. It's something that I didn't even think was possible. It was one of those things where, in the past, you just had to be careful where you threw your Pikmin at, so long as it's away from the mouth, or remotely away from the front of the creature, you would be perfectly fine. But in some cases, that's not always possible, as when the enemy does throw them off, it's usually literally right in front of them. So it does make for a little bit of a risk. But having an Ice Pikmin sacrifice itself to freeze an enemy in place is absolute genius. I didn't even... wow. I mean, at the same time, it's also very dark to think of that, but when you think about the Pikmins and everything like that, and you think of how people have used the Pikmins in the past, it's pretty self-genocide when you think about it all. Not only do they freeze the enemy if they are eaten, if they go into the water, they also freeze the water in place, which makes for excellent platforming. Obviously, the characters can go underwater, but the Pikmins, with the exception of the blue Pikmin, are the only ones who cannot traverse in water, as they will die and you will lose hundreds of Pikmin. But to see the fact that you can freeze a body of water and then gently walk across it is genius. But I wonder what would happen if you were to just say, oh, I don't know, pluck the Pikmins from the ice cube, if there's like a time limit before it defrosts into water. But another Pikmin that got revealed was a puppy Pikmin, a dog-like Pikmin, and this is the cutest thing I've ever seen. Oh my gosh, it's so freaking adorable, and I love it. I love it so much. What's even more interesting is the fact of how you can implementally use the dog Pikmin, either in terms of breaking down certain objects. It's sort of like the shrunk Pikmin in Pikmin 2, the purple Pikmin rather, where it makes up 10 or 15 Pikmins to lift an object, and the thing can drag a giant creature, and it makes up 10 Pikmins. Obviously, it could be more than that. We don't know. Obviously, we haven't seen anything yet beyond just the trailer, but it's still really cool just to see that the dog Pikmin makes up at least 10 Pikmin, if not maybe a little bit more, depending. It was also cool just to see the fact that you can ride on top of this thing, and your Pikmin can hop on his back and traverse the terrain. Like, for example, water, possibly even other areas that we haven't even been seen yet. But the fact that the Pikmin ride on top of the dog to swim across a body of water, that is like, my gosh, that's genius. I love how it looks. I love how it's playing out to be, and it's like, you know what? With the exception of the camera angle, which obviously I hope that's a thing that could be changed later on, I do love the ideal of what they've got so far, and it's really on par genius. I love it. They're literally trying to implement new mechanics into the game to vary it up a bit and stuff like that, and it looks really cool. So I'm looking forward to Pikmin 4, and that one comes out July. Okay, so yeah, it is July 21st of this year. Obviously, they've got a number of games that's going to be released alongside this year and everything like that. And for the most part, Nintendo tends to hit well in some games cases. There are some games that I get excited every once in a while, but nothing really too extravagant, if you will. For example, there's the Dead Cells game where it features the Castlevania cast, such as Simon Belmont, Alucard, and then of course obviously fighting against Dracula and Death. I was like, you know what, that's really good. That gives me a reason to try to hop back in and actually try to enjoy Dead Cells for what it is, you know, try to muscle in and stuff like that. But there was one particular game that I saw during the announcement that kind of made me go, this is something that I wouldn't mind diving into. And that is, I hope I pronounced it right, Decay Police. And I have to say, whenever I saw this, I was like, okay, this looks interesting. Obviously, this basically entails a story of a detective trying to capture criminals and stuff of that nature, but he's in like a cybernetic world, it looks like. I may have got that wrong. It's just from looking at it visually and stuff like that. But I was actually impressed by the gameplay aesthetics. I love the fact that it's like combat RPG aesthetics and stuff like that. It looks fun. It looks like it'd be a fun one. They also talked a little bit about Octopath Traveler 2, obviously. If I do plan on getting it, I want to get it on the PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5, depending on which one comes first. But also, too, we also have the confirmation of We Love Katamari remake, or remaster, depending on how you want to look at it. It's really cool because I played the first Katamari Damacy, and I played through its remake or remastered. They call it a remake, but it's more of a remaster, if you will. I mean, obviously, it's more polished and it's more fine-tuned and everything of that nature. But because of how it looks and how it is, I feel like it's more of a remaster rather than a remake. But who's to say? I don't know the full technicality of these things and stuff. But to see that we have the second game, We Love Katamari, being remade, remastered, whatever, it's really cool to see. Obviously, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I don't remember, I think, was it a Nintendo exclusive? No, it was also available on other consoles as well, so knowing that it's here, it will probably get a future release on other systems as well, probably more than likely. Along with this Direct, we also have the official announcement for Nintendo Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games coming onto the Nintendo Switch Online platform, which is great because, like I said earlier in the video, this also means that they are building an infrastructure, they're finally building on top of it. It was only a matter of time before we finally got this and everything of that nature. I'm hoping to eventually see GameCube and stuff. We'll see it eventually. It's just right now kind of what feels like a slow progression, but based on what we've been seeing so far every year, we're seeing more and more of the Nintendo family lineup finally being added on to this. This is something that I wanted to see Sony do for their PlayStation lineup, but they have yet to have done this officially and really good well, you know? Yes, they have recently announced their PlayStation Plus now combination thing, whatever it is they're wanting to call it now. I think it's just PlayStation Plus additives and stuff. But it's like, this is something I wanted to see them do, expand a little bit more and a lot better. But they've been very slow at it. Nintendo, it's kind of that same thing, but because of how long Nintendo has been around, and because of how many different consoles that they have released over the last 20 years, 30 years? I've lost track of things, but for the past like 30 plus years, they have released numerous of Nintendo consoles and stuff, and so it only makes sense that they would want to release more of the Nintendo consoles and then slowly expand it by confirming game releases and stuff of that nature. So in other words, this year we've got the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance, and this is just a small prediction, but I predict somewhere after next year we may see a Nintendo GameCube, because obviously they've done the N64, so it's a matter of time before they finally confirm the release for the Nintendo GameCube. So hopefully that ends up being the case. That'd be really cool if that ends up happening. We also have a handful of other things coming up. For example, we've got Baten Kaitos 1 and 2 HD Remaster. I had heard about these games, but I hadn't really gave them much thought, but they are, I believe they're considered one of the more harder to find games on Nintendo GameCube systems, so to see that these are getting HD remasters is really cool. That means I could actually play them and not have to worry about the pricing and stuff, so that'd be nice. There's obviously the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course. My brother has been very religiously talking about Mario Kart 8. No offense, Delmore, but at the same time, it's fun just to watch you play it and stuff. I've never been good at the Mario Kart game, sadly. I've been mostly casual at best. But it's cool just to see another kart being added onto it, and just being able to hang out with our friends and stuff. It's enough of a reason for me to say that I'm excited for the next wave to be released and stuff. And now I know you guys want me to talk about it, especially since this was literally the last thing they did talk about, and that is Legend of Zelda's Tears of the Kingdom. And I watched that part. I was very anticipating on that and everything like that. And it's really cool to see it. I really love how it looks and stuff. But there was one thing that was continuously plaguing my mind. That it just plagued my mind to no end. And I know it's just me. It's a Nintendo thing and stuff like that. I get they don't want to call it Breath of the Wild 2. But what makes this warrant a different name instead of saying Breath of the Wild 2? What makes it where they had to name it something completely different instead of just saying Breath of the Wild 2? What was wrong with not saying Breath of the Wild 2? Again, it's a me thing, I understand, but I'm just like, I'm watching this and I'm like, why did they change the name again? Why did they just call it Tears of the Kingdom and not Breath of the Wild 2? I don't know. Maybe there's something hidden in there that I'm not thinking of, but it's like, honestly, I wish they had just stuck with Breath of the Wild 2, as it feels like it is a sequel, a full-on sequel, actually, in all honesty. A partial DLC, maybe, even, for that matter. It was very confusing watching the whole thing. There's a lot of new stuff, new features, enough to warrant it as a new game, but there's also some similarities from the atmosphere and the landscape of Hyrule and stuff that makes you think that it's just an add-on rather than a continuation and stuff. But then again, there's also the fact that, like, for example, 10-2, where, yes, it's completely different gameplay, but you're still kind of exploring the same world of Spira, instead of just, you know, a completely different universe entirely. And with Legend of Zelda, this is, in fact, a sequel to Breath of the Wild. This is clearly a sequel. Why did they change the name instead of just saying Breath of the Wild 2? Again, it's just me, but I just thought to myself, I was like, why did they change the name? Why did they change it? I'm still excited for it. I'm still looking forward to it. It does look like it's going to be fun. It's going to be cool. To think those coming out this May. Holy crap. That's actually a lot sooner than I was expecting. I was predicting like August or something. You know, I was predicting it like summer or something. Obviously, that's a lot later than most people would like for it to be. But I was expecting at this point in time, what we have seen thus far, I was predicting it to be pushed on further down and stuff. But no, it's actually coming sooner, in May. And it's like, holy shit. And people are like, that's still a long way. No, really, it's actually a lot closer than you think. You know, we're in February. It'll be March before long. April will be coming up. And then May. And the thing is, it's not even late May. It's early in May. May 12th. So it's like, whoa, holy crap, that's... Oh boy. There's still other games that I gotta get, including a PS5. Holy shit. And while I've got you here, I do want to talk a little bit about Nintendo. More or less talking about their future endeavors of possibly releasing a new console. And I'm gonna tell you right now, I hope they don't announce a new console for at least another year or two. Because at least then, that gives me a little bit of hope that's like, hey, I still have a Nintendo Switch. I don't have to worry about buying a new freaking system after purchasing the PlayStation 5. You know, again, I'm fixing to finally go around and buying the PlayStation 5 when I am able to. So I'm looking forward to it, but at the same time, if Nintendo just comes around the corner and say, hey, we have the new Switch 2, or whatever they're gonna call it next, I'm gonna be like, fuck! You know, it's just like, fuck me! Yes! I just had got a new system! But I guess that depends on what games comes available for that particular system. Obviously, it literally takes like a year or two. But the rate that Nintendo is going, I say they're going strong in trying to build up a lineup of games that they can prepare for the next system. Although I guarantee you, and this is going to be the funniest thing, I'm going to laugh my ass off if this ends up happening. They finally confirmed the release for Metroid Prime 4, but it's going to be alongside the new Nintendo system. So, I could just predict that. I could predict that right now, and everyone's like, oh god, I hope not. But at the same time, I can totally see that. But at the same time, I just don't want a new Switch. I get why we need a new Switch. I get that. I understand it. I understand in terms of the performance of the Switch is not great. It is not great. It's okay at best. And I feel like looking at systems from here on out, we shouldn't concentrate more on graphic details anymore. I mean, yeah, I understand why people want pretty graphics and stuff, but really in terms of the graphical scale of things, we've really maxed out. We've really went as far as we can at this point. Now it's all about performance, and really that's not just coming from the games themselves, it's also coming from the system. Like, how hard does it have to push in order to make that game remotely run? If Pokemon Scarlet and Violet has taught us anything, is that we need better micromanagement of these games. Figure out how to make them work and how they should, I suppose the word is, communicate with the system. You know, to me, I feel like you need to have a good communication with the game to the system, so that way it works. And the weird thing is that I've heard there was a rumor where Game Freak was blaming Nintendo for not releasing the next Switch Pro or something like that. And I'm like, that's a terrible excuse if that ends up being the case, because that basically literally confirms that A, Nintendo was going to make a Switch Pro, but they never got around to it, and 2, there was potential plans for it, just something happened, obviously. I mean, they did, at the beginning of that Direct, they did say, due to COVID-19, some restrictions may vary, some dates may change, blah 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 blah, which is a good thing to have that whenever you do announce these things, as sometimes things happen. Things just happen, and it's also a good thing to know because that means Nintendo is not pushing for anything, they're not demanding anything, they're just saying, if they release, they release. If they don't, you'll eventually get it. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Again, this was just something that I wanted to talk about in terms of Nintendo side of things, what was the Direct coming up and stuff like that. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what games was coming out for the Direct that I'm either very excited for or partially excited for. There's also the fact that I've had some details that I wanted to talk about in regards to Nintendo, like, for example, the constant fanboyism about basically announcing for another Direct. I get tired of seeing that all the time. And then the continuous push for a new Switch, and it's like, for crying out loud, right? Can we stop this already? But then again, that would just make Twitter quiet. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Catch you guys later.